All right, let's get started, and the others will dribble in here as they come in. My name is Dr. Lee Osler. I am in the state of Washington. That's in the United States, obviously. And I want to excuse our other co-host tonight. Dr. Maureen Hayes is in Atlanta at an event there. She's normally with us, but and Jim and Ann Glenn, who are normally with us also from San Antonio, they are at a private function tonight, a family function, so we excuse them. I'm joined tonight by Dr. Ray Dixon, who is in Thailand, and so we love to have the Phuket, Thailand mastermind here with us to help us co-host and anchor these. So we're glad that he's here. Very intelligent man and understands the science of redox medicine like few others. We also joined tonight with our guest, Cathey Painter. She is a naturopathic physician practicing in California. And so we're glad that you're here with us, Cathey. We're just going to get this right off and toss you the ball to begin. This is my first time with you on a Redox 5, and so I for one, would love to hear your story, and maybe you can present that story and tell us what got you into the whole field of redox healthcare and the SIA specifically. And so take it away, Cathey.
Sure. Well, I live in Los Angeles, and 3 years ago, my parents, who retired to Pinehurst, North Carolina, were celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. So all the family flew in to celebrate. Well, I was in my dad's home office, which is a pretty big room, and I tripped over a box. And I opened this box, and of course, a SIA, the big blue bottle, was in this box. Now, I did not know about a SIA, but somewhere in the back of my mind, somebody had told me something about it. I knew it was something special. And I said, Dad, where did you get this? Well, I got it from my friend Poke Dillon. I haven't even started drinking it yet. So everybody that knows me knows that I'm a major researcher. I go on and I start researching about this. And I said, Dad, I got to talk to your friend Poke. And of course, I signed up. Now, in the back of my mind, the first person I was thinking about was my husband. And my husband had an abnormal cell issue that had come back after being in remission for 10 years. He was working with a medical doctor, but it wasn't making those abnormal cells go away. So I was really excited about this because years earlier, I had worked with a doctor who had told me that a lot of times, the reason these abnormal cells spread is because the immune system doesn't recognize there's a problem, and therefore it does nothing to stop it. So in the back of my mind, I knew this was going to help my husband in some way. Well, after he had been drinking for 2.5 months, the doctor said it was time for an in-depth scan. And we go in for the results, and the doctor is looking at the folder of the results. It's very obvious he hadn't looked at them, and he was intently looking at that folder. And then he just finally says, well, this is interesting. There's no abnormal cells in the bones. Well, it was very obvious. He couldn't explain how that happened, but he had quite an attitude. So I wasn't even going to bother explaining at that point. Well, of course, the next year goes by and my husband is feeling great. His numbers are great. And the doctor says, well, it's been a year. It's time for another in-depth scan. Well, we go in for the results, and this time the doctor just blurts out, you're a miracle patient. There's no abnormal cells showing up anywhere in the body, not even in the original spot. So you can imagine the incredible relief we felt, the gratitude and the joy. And at that point, I knew I had been given a gift that I needed to get out to the world. And I also have some pretty amazing testimonies from using this in my practice. I don't think we have time for all of that tonight, but I will just tell you, there's no greater fulfillment or joy in life when somebody calls you up and says, thank you. I am so grateful you knew about this. So yeah, I mean, of course, I share this with everybody in my practice, but I've gone much bigger. And some of you may follow me on TikTok or Instagram. And I do a lot of posts about redox molecules and cellular health. I do a lot of almost every single day. I go live on TikTok. I'm starting to go live on Instagram as well. But I mean, I have people that read what I post. They my TikTok lives, and these people are buying these products and drinking them and getting results. And I've never even talked to them. And so it's really just incredible, incredible.
You're muted, Lee.
Oh yeah,
Lee, you're
yeah.
muted.
There he goes.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah,
It is.
That, it's among the more dramatic ones that I've heard.
right.
And I'm sure that has given you some emotional energy, because it's one that you own.
Right.
It's personal. It's kind of like the
Yeah.
one I had when we got into this. It wasn't about me. It was about my spouse.
Yeah.
Something that we observed in her. I don't know why that always works that way. It seems that when you see it in other people, it seems to impact you more than it does yourself. And Dr. Ray, you had that too. You didn't really, you're not a sick person. And so
No, my entrance, and this is the interesting thing about how we're exposed and how we come to the party, basically. From my point of view, I'm 69 now, 70 this year. I was around 62, I think. Yeah, 62, 63. No known health issues. I always say known because, as you guys know, these things can develop and you don't know until you know. So I had no known health issues. I was perfectly well. I was on no drug medications at all. Felt good, slept well. But it was introduced by a world champion athlete who was a patient of mine, a friend of mine. She's now my sponsor in ASEA, karate world champion Lorraine Bavart. So, yeah, it was just an introduction by a friend and a patient. And when I finally did the research, as Cathey did, you kind of, when you're already a practitioner, you've kind of got a big screen up, a filtering mechanism that's built up over many years. And because I was hearing about it from a non-health practitioner, so my radar goes up higher. I'd not heard about it through the normal practitioner education channels at all. I still don't, frankly. And this is all these years later. It's extraordinary. But when I went to the science, it all made sense. The discovery of the first redox molecule, 1998, Nobel Prize, nitric oxide, Dr. Gary Samuelson, atomic medical physicist involved in stabilizing the molecules. These were all credible people writing some serious books like Your Good Self. Dr. Lee, that eventually did the same thing. So it kind of captured my heart and attention, but not through a health result in me or my family. So I love Cathey's story. Mine was about chasing the greatest health product in the world that I'd been looking for the last 45, 50 years. This was it, or seemingly it at the time, and has now proven to be exactly that. Back to you.
Well, I wanted to follow up with Cathey. You talked about earlier using this in your practice. What have you seen there? It's one thing to do it to an anonymous, TikTok worshiper.
Right.
What about, people that you actually know, you're a little bit more hands-on with?
I'm sure. Well, I will tell you, I tell everybody because it's the truth. This is the most powerful tool I've ever come across. And that's saying a lot because I've been researching and writing for years. And so I've seen chronic things like digestion and fatigue and focus issues go away. But I got a phone call from a woman in Portland, and she said, well, you don't know me. All suggested that I call you because you do a lot of research and you can help me, and I'm desperate. Well, this woman, her liver enzymes had jumped up to the 900s. Now, your liver enzymes are, in the functional world, supposed to be between 10 and 25. She was working with a medical doctor. All of their treatments were not bringing her liver enzymes down by even 1 point. She was working with a naturopath physician, spending thousands of dollars on IV treatments, and her liver enzymes were not coming down by even 1 point. And I said, well, yeah, I have something that I know will help you. little did I know how fast. Now, I had her drink twice the amount of the average person very, very quickly because she was in a dire situation. Well, after 1 week, she texted me, oh my goodness. No, she actually called me and her voice broke. She said, oh my gosh, I can't believe her enzymes by 150 points. And then the next week she texts me, oh my goodness, it's happened again, another 150 points. And every week after that, they continued to go down by 100 to 125 points. And, boy, when you think about the money that she spent on those IV treatments versus what she was, spending on these redox molecules, I mean, these redox molecules were a bargain. But, I really believe it saved her life. I really do. So I've seen some pretty amazing things.
So this really sounds too good to be true. There's got to be people either on right now with us or who will watch this later who don't have a foggiest clue as to what you're even talking about.
Yeah.
How would you introduce this? So, what do you say to people when you're trying to, get to them? What is redox?
Mm-hmm. Well, here is my introductory to redox. Every cell in your body manufactures redox molecules, but due to age and toxicity, we become deficient in them. And what do redox molecules do? Well, they have two very important jobs. They power the mitochondria, which is like the battery inside every cell. We all know that when your battery goes dead in your flashlight, the light begins to dim and it eventually goes out. And the same thing happens in your cell if your mitochondria are not powered. And then the second thing that these molecules do, they are used for redox cellular signaling, which is how our cells communicate. What's supposed to happen is when something goes wrong in the body, maybe you were in an accident, maybe you were exposed to a toxin, maybe you've got cells with damaged DNA. What's supposed to happen at that point, the cells communicate with each other what the problem is, where it is, and what needs to be done to fix it. And then the immune system gets that communication. And then and only then does the immune system go to work. And the immune system cannot fix what it doesn't know about. So that's my brief introduction to redox molecules.
So could you,
yeah, go ahead.
just say, elaborate on that? The immune system can't deal with what it doesn't know about. What do you mean by that? How do you help people understand that part?
Well, I will tell you guys, years ago, I was at a world famous alternative medical clinic with a loved one who had an abnormal cell issue. And the doctor said, before we determine a course of treatment, we first have to determine if your immune system even recognizes there's an abnormal cell issue. And I was really taken aback by that. I was like, I'd never heard that concept before. He goes, in the alternative world, we've known this for years. He said, this is how those abnormal cells can spread really fast throughout the body. He says it's because the immune system doesn't even recognize there's a problem, and therefore it does nothing to stop it. And, I explain to my clients, I know that if you have a serious chronic or a serious life-threatening issue, your immune system is not fully getting the message, because if it was, you wouldn't be in this position in the first place.
So that kind of ties into your signaling concept.
Right. Nothing happens in the body unless a signal is first received. Right.
Okay. I like your flashlight metaphor. That's a really good one. Some flashlights I get a hold of, they just kind of die in 2 seconds, and it's on and then off. But the old batteries that would just slowly decay away and become bright white to bright yellow to dim yellow to then hardly anything. That's a really good metaphor for understanding the energy and the signaling, because we can relate to it in real life with aging and so forth.
All right.
All right. What else is going on that you've observed in your practice with patients?
Well, the other day I called somebody, I quickly learned that, boy, you need to check in with people. And I always check in at the 10-day mark. And if they're not getting the improvement they hope, I will have them drink more. But I called somebody that I hadn't talked to in about 6 weeks. And I said, well, I just want to see how you're doing. And she said, I feel the best I have felt in years. And, back to the mitochondria and the cell not being charged, I feel like so many people are walking around in a state of low energy and they don't even realize it. But once they drink these molecules and they experience that energy that we are all supposed to be having, doesn't matter how old you are, you're really supposed to have that till your last days here on this earth. And so that's something that I've known people just, wow, my energy, and I just feel the best that I have felt. And so, and one other thing I want to say that I didn't really realize, but I've had probably 4 or 5 people now that were experiencing major grief. And, of course, we know, but we forget that grief is a major stressor on the body. And I've just been amazed at how, introducing these people to the Redox molecules, what it's done for them. I know that it has helped their body deal with the stress of grief. And so that has been an incredible thing to witness and hear these people that are going through that say, oh my gosh, I can't believe the difference. Just by drinking these molecules, I've been able to handle the grief much better.
And we don't talk too much about mental health issues. It seems like we spend most of our time on, physical health and physiology and so forth, but the whole mental, Ray, what's your observation there?
Well, absolutely. No,
Ray.
you talking to Ray?
Yeah, Ray.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Actually, I had some very interesting observations in that regard. Perhaps I can just start, though, Lee, by saying a sea of redox does not claim to treat, cure, or prevent any disease. It is simply providing the body, as Cathey has pointed out, with the energy and the batteries and recharging them, which every cell in the human body runs on. And that means your brain cells, your kidney cells, your heart cells. It means everything, including those liver cells that the client of Cathey was referring to that were in considerable distress. So regarding mental, emotional, it's interesting. I was a little surprised, actually. I was taken aback in the earlier months when I was sharing the products back in 2018 with some of these issues as well, how people's mental health issues, and I refer that with emotions because they're intertwined, of course, like a figure eight, were resolving or improving. And in fact, in some instances, it was following what we know in natural healing and medicine from a physical perspective. It was following almost retracing. It was bringing up issues and traumas that had been suppressed, or if you like, not dealt with, and it almost in a measure of a release mechanism. And the only way I could fathom that, and I'd be interested in what Cathey feels, or even yourself, Lee, is that we already know from genetic studies that neurotransmitters are also, of course, made by cells. And neurotransmitters, along with hormones, are intimately regulating the state of your nervous system and therefore how you feel and the clarity of your thinking. So the only way I could rationalize it is that, with that 10% increase in serotonin levels that we've seen evidence of in the first month, that there's a facilitation of the person's ability. It's not taking you over, so to speak, but it's facilitating your ability to confront or to face some issues which, as we know, need to be ultimately faced and resolved. Otherwise, they will have physical consequences.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about mind, emotion, and body like they're separate entities. Well, they're categorizations of the one human being, and they intimately are affecting each other. So I've also found that extraordinary. in that regard, with all manner of mental, emotional health issues. I mean, we tend to not name disease conditions or specific conditions on this call, and that's because the product was registered under food supplement and skin application cosmetic dimensions of registration, which of course restrict what we're able to say. And so on that note, I'm sure everyone listening can fathom what I'm referring to. All manner of mental and emotional health issues, way beyond grief. And grief is a very substantial one. I couldn't agree more, Cathey. I've seen people suffer for many, many, many years over grief issues.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you also what I believe is happening in the body. Now, I'm also an emotion code practitioner. When I work with somebody, it's, I go over everything. I want to know if there's been a traumatic emotional event in their life, because I am trained in the, and a lot of people are on board with this, but our cells can literally hold on to emotions. I call it trapped emotions. And I have seen where you get on these molecules, and I believe it's the increase and the efficacy of the glutathione. I believe that this can literally support detoxing some of those trapped emotions out of your body. Now, the other thing that I personally experienced, I'm a very intuitive person, but the pineal gland is right here. And due to there's a lot of fluoride and chlorine, and this can become very clogged. But I knew after I'd been drinking this 2 or 3 weeks that my pineal gland had been detoxed, because my intuition was off the charts. So yeah.
Yeah, from a physiological point of view, if we just kind of get back into what we know is that brain neurons are pretty fragile cells. They don't have robust, abilities to not just detoxify, but to antioxidant. Their resources of glutathione utilization are a little bit lower, perhaps, but they're just not robust. And so, in a cumulative sense, they kind of take on the cellular garbage and slow down and become kind of sludgy and so forth. And this is why, we talk about cellular renewal. We talk about cell cleanup. In science terms, we call that autophagy. And getting into a place where our cell defense mechanisms can actually take the garbage out and detox. And that presents 2 or 3 things. It talks about when you start doing something like this, you're going to have a higher rate of detoxing, which can sometimes be a problem for some people. But the thing I noticed, in fact, it was the first effect. I won't call it side effect. It was just the first effect I noticed. I'm a pretty healthy person as it was, or so I supposed. Was my mind was just sharp. I mean, I was clear. I was quick. I was precise. I slept good. I was alert. And I thought that, and if there was anything that demonstrably changed for me, that was it. My wife had a different thing. It was, I don't know, it was kind of like flipping a switch for her from, a chronic state of not wellness to she just had energy went out. But I think that is largely attributable to suddenly cells start working. They're signaling, as you said earlier, like they're supposed to, like they were designed. And I was just quick. And so this whole overlay of cognition, of emotion, of processing, of detoxing, of dealing with oxidant damage, in these cells, when that begins to work right, then it's going to spill over into just, literally everything. Is that kind of the way you see it, Cathey?
Absolutely, I do. And, in naturopath school, we learn there's, 2 causes of dis-ease. You can have one or both. One, the other, or both. It's deficiencies, nutrients, amino acids, whatever. And of course, now we know redox molecules. And then the other is toxicity. And, I always say, if you are not gently detoxing on a daily basis, you are accumulating toxins. And, I mean, let's face it, this world is so toxic. And so absolutely, when you're drinking these molecules, you're gently detoxing, and then that makes the connections work better, and all sorts of things begin to improve when that happens.
So how do you deal with people who, after they start, tell you that it doesn't work?
Well, we go over, what's very interesting is, I mean, I had a man that I was working with, and he goes, well, I don't notice a difference. And I said, well, what about that issue where you had to get up and go to the bathroom 4 times a night? He goes, well, I'm not getting up anymore. Sometimes you have to pull it out of them, because they don't, it's so gradual, they forget, But also, if at the 2-week mark, I want to talk to somebody and know, are you noticing any improvements? And if they're not, I might have them drink more for a while.
So this is a good segue, because what you just mentioned was this kind of gradual up-regulation awareness. We now have something that kind of flies in the face of that with Redox Gold, where we get something that's more instantaneous, more targeted, a quicker, thing to observe. Your comments there?
Well, I'll just tell my 2 personal testimonies. I got my hands on the Redox Gold before it became available, and my husband had been hiking with our dog, and he comes in and he can't walk, and he's like, I've injured my knee and I'm gonna have to get a surgery. I'm like, hold on, let me whip out this Redox Gold. And massaged it in for 30 seconds, and he got instant relief. But I will tell you, it was serious what had happened to him. And about 20, 30 minutes later, it was hurting again. I said, well, okay, we're just going to apply this. We were sitting down to watch TV for the night. So we applied it 4 times. Well, the next morning he woke up and he was astonished. He was like, oh my gosh, this is like nothing ever happened to my knee. He was walking around perfectly normal, wasn't hurting at all. So, he's just so excited about that. And I'm excited. I certainly didn't want to have to deal with a knee surgery. And then I was back in Pinehurst visiting my parents, and my 87-year-old father is limping really badly. I'm like, Dad, does your knee hurt? He goes, yeah, I've been told it's bone on bone. Well, he's getting ready to go to bed. And I said, well, let me put this Redox molecule, on your knee. I mean, the Redox Gold. And the next morning he comes in for his cup of coffee and he's walking like normal. I said, well, how's that knee? He goes, well, you know what? It doesn't hurt. So, I mean, gosh, that's just amazing. So Redox Gold is a big hit in my household.
Dr. Ray, how do you explain what she just said?
Well, it really goes back to the entire redox story, Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And redox signaling molecules we peak produce at puberty, so that mitochondria battery, as Cathey referred to it, is at full charge if you're a healthy puberty. And I'm afraid to say it's downhill from there at 1% per year, 10% per decade. I'd be making 50% or more less than the trillions of these essential redox molecules that we need for healthy cellular function. The knee joint is full of cells. The bone cells, osteoblast, osteoclast, cartilage is made from cells. So what's really happening is an extension of the redox story. So first they were able to make the magic blue bottle redox liquid supplement for internal use, but we can use it externally in our eyes, etc. And then they came up with the broad spectrum. Now, I say broad spectrum because there's a broad spectrum of redox molecules within these 2 products, essentially playing across all the keys of the piano, as Hunter Dean, one of our scientists, often says, chemical engineer. And so then they made the gel. So once again, we have an external means of applying and getting the benefits in a little more targeted way from the outside. From the inside, the molecules, as Cathey's pointed out, will often go to work in places you're not even aware of. until you are aware of. But some things will resolve before you have any signs or symptoms, which, by the way, addresses that question you asked Cathey about working or not working. Redox molecules cannot work or you would all be dead. They're working constantly. Your definition of working is based on some kind of signs or symptom relief. So what's happened with the gold is a revelation. It's the next generation revelation. The first revelation was being able to, outside the human body, make these redox molecules in a lab and in a plant, and now on mass production levels, make the redox liquid supplement, and then make the Renew 28 gel. And we've all seen our own miracles from that. Cathey's pointed out a number of hers today, and you and I, Lee, have seen many, many ourselves. Now, what's happened is, as they were investigating in research, university-level scientific research, which of the molecules might be more doing what part of the keys of the piano, they began focusing on one particular messenger. Why? Because the whole world's focusing on it. Why? It's called NRF2. Why? Because it is essentially known and all well proven to be involved in the production, in the genetic transcription signaling to produce glutathione. And glutathione is the master antioxidant inside the human body, and it is the master antioxidant of all antioxidants, whether they are internally produced or exogenously, externally provided in your fruit and vegetables and herbs, etc. So having now discovered this particular pathway has these fantastic results with glutathione, perhaps we should investigate that further. And that took place at other universities, Bath University in the United Kingdom, Western Australian, Western Sydney University, and they were able to unravel, of course, a lot of this is secret patented material, but they were able to unravel somewhat some combinations and balance levels of more particular redox molecules that were driving that NRF2 glutathione production pathway. And let me just finish that key first. And then as you go, NRF2 equals glutathione equals what? Well, that equals a reduction of inflammation and oxidative stress. And inflammation and oxidative stress is involved in every single human disease process or anybody else's disease processes, be it a plant cell or be it an animal cell. So, of course, now they were rejigging and concentrating these particular newer formulations, which went through 40 iterations and generations over the last 3 years to finally literally nail in the highest level of targeted fashion, driving your NRF2 glutathione production through the roof. We're talking 280% increase in glutathione levels. It's extraordinary. And so that means that particular pathway has now been heightened extraordinarily in the new topical product of Redox Gold. And that brings us back to that, is it working? Remember, we said it's always working, but the difference now is we have this extraordinary topical product that dramatically affects the body's interpretation of discomfort and pain, and dramatically affects the signaling of inflammation to the brain. Now, the cardinal signs of inflammation, one must always remember: redness, heat, swelling, pain, loss of function. This is what the cardinal signs of inflammation are. So if the body's getting signaled very rapidly through the NRF2 and glutathione that things are becoming better here and under control, then that perception and effect on pain and discomfort is going to be signaled far, far less. And that's what's happening here. So we've now got an extraordinary demonstration to people as we share redox molecules faster than we've ever had before, that it's working in their mind. And of course, that's now going to open up the gateway, because once people do know in their own mind it's working, they inherently will want to know, well, what's in that blue bottle and what's in that Renew 28? Perhaps you can ask Cathey and she can help unravel that as well. So we're going to help change the world a little bit faster with a lot more people a lot quickly.
Yeah, that's really great. Cathey, I'm going to let you respond there, but then I want you to kind of morph into, you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier as you were talking about your social media.
Mhm.
There's something happening.
Right.
Currently there is a movement, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, that people are becoming more aware. I used to just think it's because all us old folks were getting old and
Yeah.
having more issues, and but I think it's more than that. Do you want to kind of move it into that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I've been doing this work for, 15 years as a traditional naturopath. And, but there's a movement happening in this country, and it's spreading throughout the world. And people are beginning to wake up and realize that they've got to do more when it comes to their health. There's a couple of best-selling books that have hit the market. I'm just going to show you real quick. Dr. Mercola has Cellular Health. Dr. Casey Means has Good Energy. She's talking about the good energy of your cells. Look, the fact that these two books are New York Times bestsellers tells me that people are they're eager to learn what they can do to, to create optimal health. I think we've just reached a point, and there's never been a more perfect time to introduce a new health concept. And for most people, Redox is a new concept. And I'm finding that more and more people are open-minded. And I learned decades ago through trial and error that being open-minded is a must when it comes to your health. Because if you're not open-minded, you may miss out on the information that could really, really help you, with prevention, slowing down aging, or even recovery. But yeah, people are definitely more open-minded, and people are searching. People are searching.
That puts us in a unique place where, that, like the famous Wayne Gretzky, hockey analogy is where, we're not skating to where the puck is, we're skating to where it's going to be.
Right.
And that's kind of what's meeting up here. There's this nexus of things coming together where we have certain advancements in science, getting to the point where we can understand cellular health. As you know, I do a lot of research, and I've looked into literally thousands of articles on PubMed and try to stitch them together. And I'm always looking at the dates, of when these articles were published, because I really like to choose, if I can, articles that are the last 5 years, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that are like 20 plus years old, they speak about nutrition in kind of generic terms. They talk about the ingredients that we need to get from our diet, and I can remember even when I was back in school looking at nutrition as kind of a ho hum. Right. And again, I was more in an allopathic, educational model at the time, but still, nobody really appreciated it. And any health practitioners that got into nutrition were really, very much what they were labeled to be, in my opinion, which was a little bit of quackery. It's like that's kind of the way the society looked at them.
Mm-hmm.
The last 5 years, 10 years, this has really turned on its head.
Right.
And there's good research out there that and this is it's older research, but it talks about the length of time required, from a new idea to clinical acceptance. Mm-hmm. It's like 17, 18 years. I think Moore's law is making that much, much quicker now with the internet. But the point is, this is recent information, and it's about redox cell biology. And there isn't anything that happens, or it doesn't happen without some impact on these redox pathways. And so I'm really kind of excited to see this awakening. You maybe call it the Great Awakening. I don't know, but it's people are becoming, and maybe it's a little bit of self-interest. It's like what I don't want is things that are invasive or that are chemical laden and so forth as an intervention, because this whole concept of root cause is taking on new shape. Speak to us, if you would, about lifestyle. You know, this is, we talk about disease being the exhibition of faulty lifestyle, whether that's, you know, diet or lethargy or whatever. But how do you approach that in your practice and in your mind, your thinking? And how does that relate into Redox?
So you're talking to me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, you know, diet and lifestyle are always very important. But what I find is that most people, first of all, our whole education system has not truly been set up to fully educate on nutrition and diet. And then on top of that, even most people that think they're eating healthy, you know, there's just so many things being added to our food, and then the packaging. So, you know, it's not easy. It's not easy. And so, and I have learned this by trial and error, because I finally woke up and realized, well, even if somebody's in a life or death situation, they're not necessarily capable of changing everything. So I will do things like, okay, let's start with breakfast. Let's rehaul breakfast. You know, maybe it's a smoothie that you add some, you know, kale or spinach or cilantro in, and some super powders, you know, so that we're getting in some super nutrition that way. But yeah, I have to approach it based on the person, where they are at. So, but yeah, I mean, it is very important. It is very important, and exercise is important, and getting enough sleep. Oh my goodness, you know, so many people, we are here in America, what I've noticed, well, my first career, I was a television writer producer, and my husband is still in the business. But there was a real culture of working 15-hour days. Well, let me tell you, you won't last long working 15-hour days. You just won't. And in fact, everybody that I worked with, nobody is still in the business. So I think you kind of have to also change the paradigm of that as well. And so yeah, I work with the individual person, but you make changes, you know, one at a time, and then over, you know, the course of several months, you're doing a lot better when it comes to your lifestyle. And you know, one of the things I'm a big proponent of is you've got to get out in the sun. You know, so many people are working indoors all day and they're staring at their screens, and we know that light therapy, the sun, is very healing. The sun also can help power the mitochondria and many other things as well. But so yeah, it's a very broad, you know, subject, and it has to be approached based on the individual person.
Yeah, Ray, please.
The way that all connects to redox, Lee, is some things will drive your redox further. Mm-hmm. Some things will deplete and bury your redox substantially. Oh, yeah. That's exactly where it plugs into the redox story. You know, what is health promoting, healthier diet, the sunshine that Cathey mentioned, the reasonable 7-8 hours of good sleep, all drives your redox potential to its maximum levels. Not sleeping, stressing, you know, compromising your diet with chemicals, refined carbohydrates excessively, drives your redox potential down. And that is the exact equation of gaining health or losing health, which is exactly what you wrote about, Lee, in Healthy Matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the application, the thing I discovered with that is that all of this lifestyle, whether it's fasting or exercise or you know, nutritional supplements, sleep, or maybe sleep is also, you know, the sleep, obstructed sleep, like sleep apnea, you know, that creates inflammation. Diet, nutrition, gut health, you know, all of this has a redox foundation to it. There's literally nothing that doesn't have a redox connection. And, Cathey used the word mitochondria a moment before ago. It's like anytime you are, talking about mitochondria, which is really implicated in nearly every disease situation in existence, that is synonymous with redox.
Mhm.
That this whole concept of Ray, I think, was one of the earliest that talk about this, was the whole idea that redox signaling molecules are the deepest cell signaling molecules in existence, and they live at the junction between matter and energy. Matter meaning the foods that we eat and how they are metabolized or broken apart to create energy, and the expression of that or use of that energy to sustain different life forces or processes. That all happens as a consequence of the mitochondria, and it seems like everything after that is just an afterthought. And so the whole redox concept, really is founded in lifestyle. And, one of the things, kind of going back to my earlier question, I said, what if this doesn't work? And I look at people and go, well, are you exercising? Are you sitting on the couch, drinking your ASEA and exercising with your remote? You can't be a couch potato and take redox and that alone, resolve all the sins, as it were, of a bad lifestyle and habits and being what I call redox unclean. It's like we got to be redox clean to start with. So where does nutrition fit into this? Can you dive into that a little bit more, Cathey?
Well, your body needs nutrition. I mean, it needs the nutrients, the minerals, the amino acids, and I always say that if your immune system gets the message that something needs to be fixed, but you don't have the right nutrients and the right amino acids, then there's still I always say you're going to be going in circles. You're going to be going in circles. And so it's just like Dr. Ray said, it's the building blocks of redox, to have all these nutrients and the nutrition, the amino acids and everything. So yeah. And then the other thing that we're dealing with today is that our food is just not as nutritious as it used to be. So that means we've got to pay even closer attention to what we're eating. We don't have a lot of room for non-nutritious foods. We really don't.
Yeah, and most of the non-nutritious are ultra-processed anyway, which is the addition of chemicals to make them palatable or to look pretty or to last longer on the shelf and so forth.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
we're off on the foot there. So I think that came to my mind as you were saying that the source of raw ingredients, that we acquire in the foods that we eat, this ties back in directly to glutathione.
Right.
Early on, you made the comment how supplemental glutathione is really not very efficacious.
Right.
If you were IV-ing it all the time, I guess, but that requires supervision, and that's just not doable, obviously. But the point is, one of the nutritional supplements on the marketplace out there is N-acetylcysteine. They call it NAC.
Right.
And cysteine, of the three amino acids, glycine, glutamate, and cysteine, of those three peptides that make glutathione, cysteine is the more rate limiting one because it's the one that's a little harder than the other two to gain in our diet.
Mm-hmm.
So people will often use that and take that, and it'll boost their glutathione and do things in a positive way. That's a good source of cysteine amino acids. But what and this maybe is getting into the weeds a little bit. The thing that matters, though, is that those three amino acids have to be stitched together.
Right.
They have to be ligated and combined in order to make that. And when we eat them, in full form, there's glutathione in plants, but the glutathione doesn't survive the gut, and so those amino acids come apart.
Right.
Something has to put them together again from the raw ingredients, and that's where the NRF2 comes in, because NRF2 itself, a lot of people don't know this, NRF2 itself is not making glutathione. NRF2 is making the enzymes that put the glutathione together. And so I need the ingredients, but I also need the enzymes that ligate or stitch them together so I can wind up with glutathione. It's a multiple step process. And this also kind of goes back to the idea of the piano. The redox signaling molecules are not just signaling the NRF2 pathway. They're signaling thousands of these switches, these redox switches that turn on the pathways that have these end results. And there's thousands, if not tens of thousands, of outcomes, that result from that. That otherwise we're supporting with our diet and exercise and good sleep and so on and so forth. So anyway, that's a little nuance that sometimes you need both the raw ingredients. You've got to have the nutrition there, but you also need to have the signaling capability to do something with the raw ingredients that makes the end product. Is that how you see it, Dr. Ray?
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, 3 amino acids for the benefit of all our breakdown protein products. We have essential ones and not so essential, but we need them all. And there's your materials. So cells are made from materials, but it's the redox molecules that do the signaling via the DNA to regulate the orchestra. So we need both. So we've had a generation or so. And talking perhaps quickly to what you two were talking about regarding the generational changing in attitudes, we've been through science eventually unravels the truth, believe it or not. It just takes an awful lot of time. And they talk today about the science of today like it is the end truth. It's never the end truth. It's a journey. So science eventually will reveal the truth. And I think, Cathey, by the way, one of the biggest shifts, what's facilitating, it's two-sided, that one of the biggest shifts is the revelations of science, including redox signaling molecules, is going to change the world. But secondarily, people's experience in their lives, there's nothing like pain to awaken consciousness. And although we've had increasing longevity of life, we've had increasing suffering along with it, with chronic disease processes. And many of them involve pain and suffering. So, I think this has brought a lot of people questioning. They've done the allopathic models and they've used their drug medications and they've experienced some relief. And in some cases with antimicrobials, it has saved their lives and prolonged our lives. There's no doubt about that. But a longer life suffering is not always appreciated as much as a longer life feeling well. And therein lies the juncture of those two major factors, the coming together, the unraveling of science into the redox story. And as that unravels more, the proof will come to be had. In other words, it will categorically prove, I believe it already has, but there'll be a lot more coming out on how you can't just manipulate those pathways through drug medications with their side effects. But you can with a natural supplement of the redox molecules, zero toxicity, zero allergenicity. Well, why wouldn't you do that? People are going to actually land where we have landed. We're just the front party.
Absolutely.
The concept of being upstream. So, Cathey, the thought comes to me, you mentioned that you were a former writer, television, writer, producer, whatever. That's really fascinating to me. And that you do some social media work presently, I'm assuming privately and with your practice. How does all that work together for you? You're kind of a unique a sample here of somebody who has a passion, who has a message, and has a vehicle. Can you maybe?
Sure. Well, I have learned over the course of my naturopath practice that you cannot overwhelm people. They need to learn, many people need to learn in small bites. Well, in social media, I can put forth a short 1-minute video and give them an introduction. And so, and what I found is that I've been doing this for about exactly a year now. And in the first 6 months, I was like, oh, I don't know if this is working. But then I started getting people reaching out to me. I want to get on these molecules. I've been following you for 3 months. And over the course of those months, they got enough information, and again, they were able to let it digest. And then, they also got to know me and trust me. And that's a really big part of this, is people want to know that they can trust you. And look, when I say I'm on TikTok, I'm not dancing and acting silly. I'm not one of those people. I am literally just doing videos from the heart, explaining, what I explain. And but it's taken time. It's taken time to, again, reach people and educate people. But it's made a difference. It's really made a difference. And I just have to tell this story real quick. I had a woman that was watching my videos, and she was going through treatment. She had a tumor in her spine, and the radiation treatment was causing these open sore ulcers. And it was so, hurting her so bad she couldn't sleep at night. She was working with a wound specialist, and she wasn't getting any better. And she had been watching my videos, and she just ordered the essential bundle. And it came, she started drinking it that day. And that night, before she went to bed, she just globbed the Renew 28 on those open ulcers. And I'm so glad she did a before and after picture. But literally, it went from a big open sore to a tiny, tiny scab overnight. And I got an email from her saying, oh my goodness, my ulcer is 1,000% better overnight. And I literally put that video up on TikTok and on Instagram, because I know that so many other people are also suffering. And here she got this incredible relief overnight. So, but my journey, I started out as a television writer, producer, and back in the days when there was not the big access to the internet. So I had to learn a lot of research skills. Everything that, I wrote about and put up on the screen, I had to have it backed up with research. And then I had my children, and I couldn't work those kind of hours. But then, my husband had this abnormal cell issue, and I used my research to realize that, there were some things that we weren't being told. And that's when I realized that research and knowledge was so important. And, I tell everybody, never blindly put your health in somebody else's hands, especially a doctor. Get a second and third opinion. And it's, and then I started helping people, and I went back to school and became a traditional naturopath because I felt like I needed a credential. And so, yeah, but really, I mean, everything I do, from working with people as a naturopath to sharing these molecules, educating people on these molecules, it's because I truly, truly would never want somebody to suffer due to lack of knowledge.
Well, this has been a delight. We're at the end of the hour, and I've thoroughly enjoyed, our time with you and hearing your story, and we appreciate that very much for you coming on. Dr. Ray, thank you for being with us tonight. Dr. Ray, do you want to tell us what's happening next Friday for the Redox 5?
All right. Yeah, well, I can mention one of the main guests, yes. Okay. You're there, Lee, are you? Are you there?
Yep.
Next one. Anyway, we have Sally Misso Diamond from Australia. She is a diamond in the company of Asia, a champion swimmer in her day, missed the Olympic team by 0.4 of a second. A lot of experience as a practitioner, has been involved in remedial therapy and acupuncture and many other tools in her toolbox, which she'll share, but very much involved with the ASEA Redox for many years now. One of my mentors, really, when I started, back in 2018. So Sally certainly is our guest for next week, so that should be exciting.
Yes, and so again, thank you, Dr. Painter, for being with us. Dr. Dixon also, I'm Lee Osler, and we're checking out this week, and we will see you all next Friday at the same time and place. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.